Now, for the speaker we've all been waiting for, I'm very, very honored and proud to introduce and welcome back Carole Rodoni, everybody. Let's give her a big warm welcome.
I wanted to say first you have a magnificent voice with a nice song. Thank you. It was wonderful to share with us. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the national economy. We're going to talk about Silicon Valley. I want to talk about the buyers and sellers that are out there in the market you have, where it was, where it's going, where it is, all of those things that we can roll it into one. So let me start with the national economy, and I have to do that because, you know, I caveat it by always saying the national economy and basically the San Francisco Bay Area are like apples and oranges, and you know that. We don't move like the rest of the nation. We move to a different drummer. They think we're basically crazy out here, but we like being crazy. So at the end of the day, nationally, what are we going to do? Well, you know, they said they were going to be at 3% GDP this year. I don't think so because we had first quarter at one point -7%, and basically then had second quarter went crazy, 4.2, raised it to 4.6. Third quarter was 3.5%. This fourth quarter will come in at 3%, but when you add all of them together, they're not going to get us to 3%. Now, why was that 3% important? It was important because it would have been the first time in the last 5 years that we've gotten to 3% growth in this economy. But unfortunately, we're still going to be at about 2.5, 2.7, something in that range. Now, that being said, we're still the best economy out there when you look around the world because Europe is in a recession, Japan is flat, China's gone from 12 down to 7%, and we have all kinds of chaos going on around the world which has affected all the economies of the world. So the United States is still the engine that's basically driving the train for everybody. That's one of the reasons that basically the dollar is up so much substantially against the yen and the pound and everything else that's out there because it's come back. It was down, you know, 33% our dollar, and everybody said, oh, it shouldn't be the international currency of choice anymore, but boy, has it come back. So I think that means that basically we're still the engine, number one. Number two is, let's look at the stock market. Up 30% last year. This year we're going to probably be at high single digits, if not double digit. If you see that we're above 17,500, we're going to get to probably 18,000. And it's very interesting what's happening in the stock market this year. Last year it was the tech stocks, the energy stocks, and healthcare that drove the market. This year those are doing pretty well, even though energy is down a bit for a short period of time. But we have all the trieds and truths, all the old companies that are doing well this year. And so that's a good balance and probably better for the stock market. So I think we're in very positive shape there, and that's a good thing because we live on the stock market here because everybody has options and stock bonuses and all that kind of thing. Economics, let's look at basically the employment numbers. You know that they say we're getting 200,000 jobs every month, and we're down to about 5.8%. Well, I know you don't believe that number because they don't count half the people that aren't looking, et cetera, et cetera. But let's talk about what's happening here because that's important. Here, we're doing about 25% of all of those 200,000 jobs every month. They can't fill stuff fast enough in Silicon Valley. A programmer right out of school, 21 years of age, green behind the ears, is probably starting at $150,000 to $175,000 a year. Let me just give you some numbers. In San Francisco, they're at 4.3% unemployment. Marin County is below 4%. San Mateo County, 4.6%. Santa Clara County, 4.8%, and over here in Alameda and Contra Costa, where you had double-digit unemployment for a while, you're basically probably in the 6% range. So we have come back substantially, and we know that employment and the economy drives the housing market. Let me talk for a minute about that 10-year note. You know, everybody said it was 1.6 in May. It creeped up to 3% when Mr. Bernanke opened his mouth and said the economy was getting better, poor guy. They slapped him. It got back down. It was about 2.6, 2.8 for a long period of time. And here we are sitting at 2.2, 2.3, and everybody's saying why. Well, there's a bunch of reasons for that. One is obviously we've stopped the economic easing, and we stopped buying all those mortgage-backed securities, and everybody said, oh, it's going to be the end of the world. And the stock market, when they announced that, went down 700 points in one day. It's come back. It didn't make any difference at all. Mrs. Yellen has said repeatedly she's going to keep interest rates low for a considerable length of time. And I think this is why she puts that considerable length of time in. Because when you look at tech and healthcare and you look at energy, they're not interest-sensitive, basically, industries. But when you look at housing and construction and manufacturing and retail, those are all very interest rate sensitive. And they're the ones that have come back the slowest, and she can't muck those markets right now, just when they're beginning to breathe again and coming out of cardiac care. So I think she's going to keep interest rates low, probably until the third quarter of next year. Now, what else is keeping interest rates low? Well, we have everything out there. You have Ebola, you have ISIS, you have Mr. Putin in the Ukraine, you have Europe in a recession, name it, you've got it. So that's all keeping interest rates down, because people are running here to buy our 10-year note, because in Germany you get 0.25% on a 10-year note. Over in Greece they'll give you 5 or 6%, but you'll never get paid on it, so why would you want to buy it? So at the end of the day, our crappy 2.2 looks pretty good when you compare it to the rest of the world. And banks, because of Dodd-Frank, have to increase their capital reserves, and so they're basically buying the 10-year note to get to the capital number that they have to get it when they have those assessments. So I think basically, look, we're doing pretty well. Obviously, oil has come way down. You know, it's in the $77, $75 range now. I think part of that has been done as sanctions against Mr. Putin, because he needs oil at almost $100 a barrel to keep Russia moving. Well, he's not in good shape. So I think that basically you'll see it go down for a while, puts more money in everybody's pockets, probably will start to either creep up slowly, but I think that we're in that $70 range for a while, and that's a good thing for everybody. So nationally, look, there are areas still in the recession, but everybody's coming out of it. The economy is slowly getting better. But let's talk about Silicon Valley, because there's a revolution going on. And there you have everything and everything on fire, hiring people, taking out more space, building new environments, basically out there buying companies, mergers and acquisitions, splitting their stocks, buying back shares, doing all kinds of partnerships. So you know what's been happening, obviously. Facebook, obviously, is on the roll out there. Just bought WhatsApp, that big application that everybody says, oh my God, they paid $19 billion for a company with 55 people. Well, they didn't. They actually paid $22 billion, because by the time the deal was done, Facebook stock had gone up in value. Everybody said they overpaid. No, they didn't, because this little tiny company of 500 million people that come in every month and growing at 40%, 90% of their business is done internationally. And Facebook has a big national presence, 1.5 billion people that come in every single month, but they weren't big internationally. So they bought the international market all in one day. And this little tiny company that has 55 people, and you have an application for 99 cents that you video, text, or messenger somebody around the world, guess what? You make 43 cents profit on every one of those, which doesn't sound like much, except 50 billion of them go out every month. You take 50 billion times 43 cents and you've got a good piece of change. So basically, Facebook did a good thing. Then they turned around 2 days later and they bought Oculus, which is basically how you're going to do video teleconferencing. You don't have to have a screen. You're going to have a helmet that you wear with glasses and goggles. So 24/7 now, you can be having sex in the bathroom, whatever you're doing. Everybody will be connected now. You don't have to stop working anytime, any point, any part of the day. That'll be wonderful. Now, let me talk about what else has happened. So you have Apple with Beats. You have Yahoo that basically had 22.4% of Alibaba. And let me talk for a minute about Alibaba. Alibaba is probably going to go down in the textbooks as the most perfect IPO if you wanted to do one, versus Facebook's, which you know had the disastrous IPO, which was sad because they will use that forever, even though the stock is very valuable. Why was Facebook a bad IPO when it came out? Because they priced it too high at the high range of the deal. They basically went to NASDAQ that couldn't handle the volume. And they had all young kids around the table, which is not wrong. It's great. The world belongs to the young. But you know, it's nice to have somebody with gray hair there sometime who can tell these young people, you're probably not doing this the right way. Let me tell you, I've done 300 of these. This is your first one. Maybe you're moving in the wrong direction. So they basically go out, they go public right away, the first hour of the stock exchange. They couldn't basically do the buys and sells and get people to meet. They were giving people numbers that they couldn't confirm and they couldn't come true, and it cost them about $400 million. Now you compare that to basically Alibaba, a 10-year-old company with Mr. Ma, who was a former school teacher, who's basically gave up 92% of his company in order to get it to grow. So he only has 8% left, and you know the day it went public at $250 billion, it made him the richest man in China. Now he can look at Singapore and Hong Kong when he goes public, but he doesn't want to go there because he needs two kinds of stock. Because he only has 8%, he doesn't have control, but he wants to keep control. So they don't allow two kinds of shares, but the New York Stock Exchange allows you to have one shareholder, one share, and then a preferred shareholder that gets 2 votes for every share that they have. So that's what he did. He comes to the New York Stock Exchange because he knows they can handle it. They go out, they start at $60 to $66 in the range. They hit the road, they realize this stock's going to open at 80 at least. It opens up 5 hours after the New York Stock Exchange that day because the old guy with the gray hair from Goldman Sachs keeps saying no, 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 and this is why. Because he said, I can't find enough sellers for this stock for the buyers that I need, and until I can do that, we're not opening this stock. The first 10 minutes, 100 million shares of that stock were basically traded. Now you know where it went. It went up to 100, came down to the 90s. Basically, they had the day called November 11th, which is single day in China. And just to give you some statistics, they did $5 to $6 billion last year in one day. This year, they did $9.3 billion in one day in China, 250 million packages that are going out. Their last quarter, they had $2.5 billion net operating profit. They were up 43% in revenue and 63% basically in net operating profit. Now, where was that stock? It's 118, 119. Now, everybody asks me, why am I going into this? Because they're in the valley now, guys. Yahoo, 22.4%. Mr. Sun, who owns SoftBank, owns 30% of Alibaba. All of those people now have enterprises and basically office space there. Yahoo had to sell 10% of their 22.14% share day one. So they are now sitting with $7 billion in cash, of which they have promised that half of that number will go down to their shareholders, which means there's going to be a lot of cash out in this valley. And you know what they're going to do with it? They're going to come out there and buy all these gorgeous properties that you have over here in the East Bay. Now, I'll tell you a little story about Alibaba. I had an opportunity to buy Alibaba about 6 or 7 years ago when nobody knew about it, okay? And it was through my son, because he's a hedge fund guy, and we got it through a private investor that needed to sell his shares. So we get it, and my son calls me up, and he says to me, Mom, there's this company in China called Alibaba, and this guy's willing to sell his shares for $6 a share. Oh, wait a minute. This is a sad story. So at the end of the day, I'm looking at him, and I'm saying to him, William, I don't want to buy a Chinese company for $6 at my age. Are you kidding? It'll never come true. And what will happen? And do you know anything about it? Have you seen any of the financials? Mom, I'm telling you. I've been researching this company for 6 months. We got to buy the stock. So he gives me this number he wants to buy, and I said, I don't think so, William. That's the family fortune. So he said, okay, where will you go? I said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll buy 20,000 shares. That's 100 and whatever, 20,000 bucks. I said, and that's it, kid. And if you're wrong, you're giving it back, and you're paying it to the family, and I don't care how you do it. Walk the streets, I don't care what you do. So now, here we go, and it starts to go public. And in December, my accountant and the lawyer always meet with me at the end of the year to look at everything and make sure everything's kosher. And they sit down, and the first thing they say to me is, you know, Carole, a person at your point in life, which was a nice way of saying you're an old bag now, so we have to do some estate planning. And they said, you know, Carole, here's your 3 choices. You have to start to give some things away, and you can either give it to the government when you die, your children, or your grandchildren. Well, I had to think about that really hard, okay? And I thought, the government's not getting it if I can help it. The children, the grandchildren, maybe, okay. So they convinced me to give Alibaba, and I'll tell you why. Because it was $6, which means it's a very low price against my lifetime exemption. And they figured it would go to $20 or $25 a share, a highly appreciating asset, which is exactly what you want to do. So the day this thing goes public, I'm in my car, and my 2 children call me. Each have now gotten 10,000 shares, and this stock now closes at $90-some a share, thanking me for making them instant millionaires. So I am depressed, okay? I'm really, really depressed. And the next call I get is from the stupid accountant who says to me, isn't this wonderful? Look at the money you save, Carole, paying the United States government on taxes and inheritance taxes. And I said, you know what? You assumed I was going to sell that stock. I said, what if I borrowed against it, took a toy boy, and went around the world and had a hell of a good time? So my children now are breathing and living in wealth, and they're going to have to support me in my old age. So that's Alibaba's story. Everybody asks me what I've been buying. Let me give you some things that I've been buying. I did buy some more Alibaba, but I didn't buy it obviously at $6 a share, but I think that's going to be a $200 stock probably in 1 year. Mr. Basically Ma has said that he wants to control all of the markets, including the United States. He's now at $90 billion a year. He says he wants to be the Walmart of e-commerce, which means he has to get to $467 billion a year. So I think, number one, he's going to buy something. So one of the companies you might want to look at is Yahoo. Yahoo, basically, he had to give him $7 billion. I think they're going to be for sale within the next year, probably 18 months. I think Alibaba might buy it, Microsoft might come back and buy it, I think Google might be in play for it, and Facebook might be in play for it. So that's another stock that I bought. I bought Apple, and I bought Apple not because of Apple, but because of Carl Icahn, who's a corporate raider that has $5 billion sitting in Apple, and he wants that stock at $200 a share, and it will get there with Carl Icahn. So I bought some Apple. Then I bought a company called Illumina and one called Avago, A-V-A-G-O. Those are semiconductor companies. I bought some Hershey the day I was so depressed from the Alibaba because I figured the hell with it, might as well enjoy something sweet while I'm getting depressed. And then I bought something called Foot Locker, and I'll tell you why. Because the new mantra out there is everybody's going to be wearing these sneakers that are $300 and $400 that are all decorated and sequined, and that's the new mode out there, the funky kind of dressing that we're all going to get into. So I thought Foot Locker has 1,300 stores across the United States. That can't be bad, a little retail. So that's sort of what I've done. Not recommendations in the sense that basically you should buy them and basically do it, because if you go broke, don't call me, because I'm already broke after I gave my kids the Alibaba stocks. All right, so that's sort of the stock market. Now let me talk a little bit about basically the Valley again and what I think is going to happen and what I think is going to be wonderful for your area over here. Let me talk a little bit now about real estate, and let's talk about big picture, and then let's get down to the local area. I know that real estate is a darling asset, and I will tell you why. If you follow the money, you begin to see who's getting into the real estate business, and you begin to see that it's all the people that control all of the money in the world and around the United States. First of all, let's talk about Mr. Warren Buffett, who basically has gotten in the real estate business through Berkshire Home Services. He now owns Prudential, and you're seeing the signs begin to change. He owns 34 real estate companies across the United States. And he just came in a couple of months ago and bought a company called Intero and took the president of Intero and brought him down to Orange County and made him the CEO of Berkshire Home Services. He is on the roll now to get into the real estate business. You know that Coldwell Banker bought Zip, not because they loved Zip, because Zip never made a profit, but obviously for its technology. Mr. Murdoch, who owns the Wall Street Journal, basically just bought a company that's a listing company called Move.Inc. Then you have another group that's coming up here called Restoration Real Estate that's out of San Diego, and they're going to basically say, we'll do construction plus real estate, so hire us. And then you have the big one, which is the auction.com. Now, auction.com I'm going to mention because Google just put $60 million into it as a test, because they want to see if they can make online real estate work. Because Zip tried it, and it didn't work so successfully for them, but they're going to do a different model. And the reason why I mention is that there are 42 states, they have 96,000 listings. Most of them are foreclosures and short sales because they've taken the model of real estate and they flipped it 365 degrees. Because they say to the seller, come on our site, you will not pay a commission or fee, we're going to make the buyer do that. So this is how it works so that you understand when you hear about it and what you can say to your clients. One, you're a seller, you come on the site, they set the price, you cannot. They put a cap on it, so it has to sell at that price or they won't sell it. Now here's the problem with that. Mr. Seller, you have the most important and valuable asset in your portfolio that you're going to put in the hands of somebody who's a telemarketer sitting in Fargo, North Dakota or India. They know nothing about local real estate, none of our rules, none of our regulations. You're going to be responsible to own your own open houses. You're going to be responsible for all the disclosures. Therefore, all the work of doing this property and selling it and all the liability falls on your shoulders. Terrific. The buyer has to pay 6%. Don't you think they're going to consider that when they give you an offer? Of course they are. When you look on their site, you will see that they have very few properties in Northern California because our properties are too expensive here. They really want quantity, and they like the 87,000 to 150,000 properties, and those are all in the heartland of America. So basically, you're not going to have a big selection here, and you're not going to do yourself a favor, Mr. Seller, by getting on that site here. So that's number one. Number two is now let's talk about the buyer. The buyer has to come in with a 1% agent. So now let's talk about that. You're a 1% agent, so you're doing it out of your car, and then the day you're walking the streets and you're a porno dancer so you can make a living. So now you have two idiots who basically know nothing about real estate representing you in the most important portfolio asset that you have. So you have the $8 an hour telemarketer and the 1% agent. This is just wonderful. Now what happens is, after you buy the property, the buyer must pay to auction.com a 5% buyer's fee. Now why do I mention it? Because Google is giving them a test, and if the tests work, Google will give them more money. And let me tell you what their tagline is. They've been advertising in the Wall Street Journal, and what they've been saying is, the old way of real estate is gone. There's a new way to do real estate, more transparent, faster, quicker, more efficient, cheaper, and better. Happy bidding. That's exactly going to be their tagline. So you need to know about that, because you need to know, when you talk to your clients, how to be able to fight that. So that's number one. Real estate has become a darling asset. What's going to happen over to the East Bay? In the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to blossom over here, and I'll tell you why. Statistics show us that by 2040, there'll be 2.1 million more people in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that means 1.1 million more jobs. Now, you know that you have land here and ability to build. What's going to be the asset of choice out of real estate? It's going to be condominiums probably, not single-family homes in some areas, because we don't have enough land, but we can certainly go up. And what's coming is what we call themed condominiums. So they're going to have condominiums, and the newest ones that are going to come out there are the ones they're going to put right next to shopping malls. They'll take the parking, which is too valuable, put it underground, and build condominiums next to shopping malls. The others will be basically condominiums for young people with families that have all the amenities that they need. You know, kindergarten, daycare, they'll have, you know, the arts and crafts, they'll have tennis lessons and gym and all that for the children. Then you're going to have the condominiums for basically the singles, where they'll have sports bars and libraries and wine tasting rooms and gyms and saunas and all of that. So that's basically coming out here, and we see that. The second thing is, all the cities out here, you're very lucky because you're young and you're new, and they like that. These millennials like anything with this 24 hours, 7 days a week, that's funky, that's new, that's close to transportation, that has all the nightlife and all the concerts and all the day fairs and all the amenities for kids, for people to bike, to do the spas, to have 87 restaurants, and you have all that out here. Now everybody says to me, but Carole, how are they going to get out here because we have a traffic problem? Well, let's talk about that. Two things are going to happen. Those buses that you see on 101 that you hate, those buses now are being basically transported and basically transferred into walking, working environments. So you're going to get picked up in, let's say, Benicia or Brentwood or Union City or Richmond or Livermore or Brentwood, and we know it's an hour or 2 hours to get down to Silicon Valley. But you don't need to be in Silicon Valley 8 hours a day. You can work on the bus, because these buses are going to become mobile work environments. So the 2 hours it takes you to get to Silicon Valley, they're going to pay you to work, and you can basically talk, you can do a meeting, you can write a report, you can do whatever you want. So now 2 hours here and 2 hours there's your hours, and 4 hours at the office you put in your 8-hour day. The other thing that's going to come your way is watch for manufacturing to come back across to the East Bay, and I'll tell you why. We have figured out finally that it basically is in many cases not beneficial to do all our manufacturing abroad. It was at one time. Low-cost leader, get it out there, it was fine. The world has changed in the last 20 years since we started to do that, because now, what does everybody want, and what is every online company trying to say? I can get something to you quicker and faster than somebody else can. You can order it now, and in 3 hours I'll have it at your front door. That's hard to do when it's in China, sitting over there. That's pretty impossible. That's number one. China is no longer the low-cost leader, so we went to Vietnam. Then we went to Taipei. Now we're going to go to Africa. But here's the problem. Many of the products that they get over there are not of the standards that we need. Now let me give you an example. You know we have the iPhone 6 with the sapphire screen that doesn't break now, but it bends. Oh, great. It was made by a Chinese company who went into bankruptcy right after they did the first round of iPhone 6s, and it cost Apple $400 million to keep them solvent so they could get all the iPhones they need for Christmas. Oh, you know that beautiful bridge we just built for $6 billion? You know what's happening to all the rods and nuts and bolts, don't you? It's going to cost us $24 million a year to coat them so the whole goddamn thing doesn't fall. The other bridge stood up just fine after the earthquake. This one that cost us $6 billion is going to fall down before that one does. So at the end of the day, where did that come from? Steel from China. So at the end of the day, they're beginning to say time is very important, quality is important, and if the cost is a little bit higher here, when you add in all the differential, it isn't that much of a difference. Manufacturing can come here because you have the area, the land, it's less expensive than over at the other side of the bay, and you're going to begin to see a lot of companies build manufacturing sites here, and then a little further out as you get to some of the other areas. So that means that real estate is going to be very good for you. So you should think that it's a darling asset. Now let me kind of talk about the market last year, the market this year, and where we're going. Last year, remember, you're always 6 to 8 months behind the other side of the bay. So what happened over there? Low inventory, low interest rates, a lot of demand, no supply. Basically, ready, willing, and able buyers, a lot of foreign buyers, multiple offers, preemptive offers. It was a real frenetic market. The market this year has basically become more in balance. That's the word I like to use. I think we have a sweet market. A sweet market means that it can be good for both buyers and sellers if they understand the world that they're living in, all right? Now, here's what they read and here's what they see. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that talked about real estate cooling down again, and I hate that word because when you say cooling down, in the mind of the client, that means it's going south of Sunday again, and that house that now is $400,000 is going back to $250,000. Well, let's talk our numbers. At the height of the Depression and the recession here, we were at $290,000. We're now at about $681,000. And yes, there are many areas over $1 million, like San Francisco, all right? All that means is we've really come back. Everybody says that that's an affordability issue. It is an affordability issue. All it means is not everybody can live in San Francisco. Some people are going to have to come to different areas where they can find something for $300,000 or $400,000, and they will get a beautiful environment there. So all it means is you can't everybody live every place you want. So what has basically happened this year? The basically entry market, which wasn't hot last year, has gotten extremely hot this year. So when you start in San Francisco, it's the Outer Mission. In Marin County, it's Novato and Marin City. As you come down in the peninsula, it's going to be Broadmoor, Daly City, South San Francisco, Shoreview. It's going to be parts of San Jose. When you basically come over here, it's going to be basically Benicia, it's going to be Vallejo, it's going to be Union City, it's going to be areas like that, Brentwood. All those areas now have gotten extremely hot because those are the areas where we call the worker bees, those people that buy by location, but they buy where they can afford and they have to live. The key for them is to get in. Why? Because look, real estate right now still builds well. Two ways. You can show them renting versus buying. We're still in a position where because of the tax benefit and because if you get a loan that pays the principal down, you actually are at an advantage by buying versus renting because rents have gone through the roof. The other thing is interest rates. You've got to talk interest rates to people. If you had bought a home in 2002 at $600,000, 30-year loan, 25% down, your payment was $4,000 a month because you paid 7% interest. Today, that same house, same loan, at 4.5% interest, here's what happens. The old loan, when you paid it, 7 to 9% went to pay down the loan, and all the rest went to the bank. Here, at 4.5%, first of all, your payment isn't $4,000. It's only $3,000 a month, and 27% goes to pay down the loan, and then the balance goes to interest. So what you're saying to somebody is, you used to live in a world where 9% of what you got to build down that equity. Now you've got 27% because of the 4.4% interest rate. So you need to get in and you need to appreciate interest rates going into real estate, not just the appreciation. The other thing is we appreciated 24% last year, and we will continue to appreciate. Another thing that's going to happen to real estate is we're still going to have 22% all cash buyers, and the next business thing that's coming at us is going to be foreign buyers. In 2013, they did about $56 to $60 billion in real estate in this country. They did $92 billion this year. Next year, they're projected to do about $130 to $150 billion. Now, why are they coming and where do they come from? Canada brings us 13% of all our buyers. followed by China, Mexico, then all the South American countries, and Russia. Why do they come here? Because they all want to get money out of their country as fast as they can, because in many cases they don't own the land, they just own the property, and in many cases they know that the money that they have there isn't safe, and they're afraid that the governments will come in, or there'll be a coup and somebody else will come in, and they'll readjust all the values, they'll readjust the currency, and they'll take away their wealth. So you have a lot of good things going for you in real estate. The last thing that's going to make real estate very desirable and very, very wonderful for you is what we define as real estate is going to change. Because you think of real estate as single-family condos, townhouses, all right? Let's increase that, and let's say that these millennials, the 25 to 45-year-olds, their definition of real estate is, I want a single-family home, then I want a vacation home, and then I want to get in the investment of real estate business. So that's going to mean apartments, offices, storage spaces, hospitality centers, skilled living facilities, basically small hotels and small strip malls. Oh, and by the way, one of the hottest things with these millennials is trailer parks. Now, you all think trailer parks is what? Trailer trash? Well, do you know that there's a trailer park in Pacific Grove in Malibu, California, where you can overlook the ocean, where a common trailer there sells for $2.3 million. And they just had one that sold for $3.7 million, and your neighbor there is Matthew McConaughey. You know who he is, the guy in Interstellar who just won the Academy Award last year. So think trailer parks, because we have a lot of mountains that people can sit on and look out over. We got oceans here, we got water. They're coming, the people that basically started this one in Pacific Grove in Malibu. A wonderful investment, low maintenance, a lot of return on your investment. So think that, because that's what they're interested in. They're going to love ranches, vineyards, of which you have a lot here, homes with vineyards. All those kinds of things are the things that they're going to aspire to get, because most of them already have stock in the companies they work for, and they want to diversify their portfolio. Now let me talk a little bit about how you're going to talk to these sellers and buyers. Okay. Sellers, as far as I'm concerned, are always nuts, because they always live in a mirror and that's in the rear view, and they have a market that they can't have because they should have had it, but they didn't take advantage of it. So last year was a great year for them, we know that. Now I think you've got to make sure they don't get greedy, and I'm going to tell you why. What you have to do when you go out is say to them, I'm not here to list your property, I am here to sell your property. There's a big difference between listing and selling, because listing you can list at any price. Selling, you have to basically work with the market. That gives you the opportunity to explain to them what the market is doing, what their market is doing, what their neighborhood is doing, what the competition is doing that they're facing, and it gives you this wonderful opportunity to talk about the profile of the buyer. Because it's the buyer who writes the check when you sell a piece of property, and they have to know, is it a millennial, is it somebody with all cash, is it a foreign buyer that's just looking at the return on the investment, is it somebody trying to get an FHA loan, which means they're going to have to live with the appraisal from the bank. Who is it, and who's going to come in, and who's going to buy your property, because that makes a difference. Now I think you should give them choices, and I would give them 3 choices. And the first one would be at the highest rank that they could possibly be at, and I would give them the first test, which is that it's simply impossible, and you cannot do that. Now let me tell you why. I heard this morning about some discounting that was done. If you're dealing with clientele 25 to 45 in that price range, that is deadly, and I will tell you why. This group, 25 to 45, let me try to explain what they're about. They're what I call the me generation. It's all about them, what they want, how they want it, if they want it, when they want it. They will put the value they place on the house. If it's the location and zip code and lifestyle that they like, they will pay for it and pay a premium, and if it's not, they don't care. And what they absolutely do not want is a house that basically nobody else wanted, and therefore it got in the reduction business, or you thought they were stupid enough that you, Mr. Seller, overpriced it, and now because it's reduced, you think they're going to run in and buy it. Because everything about them is success, showing success, making people think they have the art of the deal. They're very competitive, and that basically they win at the table every time they go to it. They love their friends more than their family. They love pets more than their children. And I'll tell you now, 68% of all Americans own pets. We spent $55 billion last year on our pets. And in Halloween, just a few weeks ago, we spent $30 million on pet costumes for pets. Now, if that doesn't tell you what this group is like, I don't know what to tell you. So here you are with an overpriced listing, and now you become the second-hand rose. So they're using your house to sell everybody else's, and you expect them to come back now and basically go crazy because you reduced this $25,000. You cannot do that. You have to be priced, and here's the safe place, the second S. You can be at market as long as you know that where you're at market, there's enough time that the market won't change. Average days to sell are about 26 to 30 days. That's what it's taking. That's a safe place to be. If they really want to be super smart, I think what they would do would be put at 1 to 3% under the market. Because see, above the market, what they're doing is trying to push appreciation, and that's difficult in a market that's already appreciated 24% last year. But when you're aggressive and you're 1 to 3% below the market, then you can chase appreciation, and that's a good place to go, because then if you're chasing it, you'll catch up and maybe even push it further. So I think that's what you have to tell sellers. They have to get realistic about this world that they're in. Now, buyers are a little bit different, because it depends whether they're entry buyers, those worker bees. Everything is going to be dependent upon zip code, where they can afford to buy. The bank, what the bank is going to do for them, what the appraisal is going to say, and how much they can stretch to get in. And that's the key. Is it a house? Is it a condominium? Is it going to be in a B location? Everybody says they don't want to be in a B location. I think B locations, not only for single family, but for investments, are the best pockets right now, because they're the ones that are going to appreciate over time the most. Because every B location that I see is going to become an A location, because every city is redeveloping itself. So those B locations are very valuable. Don't downplay them. They can be wonderful. They'll become A locations. A locations right now in real estate, they're going to pay a premium. So you have a client that wants to pay the premium, fine. They need to understand the game. You're going in, there's 9 other people with all cash offers that are just like you. They're competitive, they want to win at the table. So you have to go in first, hit the home run, be the highest offer at the table, and that's it. But we don't want to do that. Then fine, then we can't buy there. We have to go someplace else and look where we can negotiate some terms and conditions. So they have to understand their limits, what they're doing, the kind of markets they're going to be in, how they're going to compete or negotiate, and what that's going to take in order for them to win at the table. So I think that's the kinds of markets that you have right now. Will we appreciate? Of course we will appreciate. We're going to continue to appreciate. It'll either be single, in some cases maybe even double-digit appreciation, depending upon price, location, and area. One thing I can tell you, real estate is basically the darling asset right now. So nobody in this area, now let me tell you the difference. I can't tell you how many people over the last 18 months have said to me, oh, Carol, what about Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Sacramento? We're going to go up there and buy something. What do you think? And I used to say to them, why? Because it's cheap, Carol. Okay, when did cheap ever have anything to do with value? And they said, but Carol, you can buy 4 houses in Sacramento for 1 stupid house I can buy in Livermore. I said, oh great, then you'll have 4 vacancies instead of 1. That's a good thing to do. Great, okay. So at the end of the day, let me give you some statistics. We are appreciating here. We are up 24% last year. We are still up from over a month ago and up to the year, almost double digit again. Now let's talk about Las Vegas. Down in sales 11%, and last month 53% of every listing they had never even got a first offer. In Phoenix, same thing, up 44% in inventory, down 11% in sales. Sacramento, the same thing. So you begin to understand what I'm saying. Real estate is and always will be a specific kind of market area, location, lifestyle, zip code, does it appeal to people, demand, supply, low interest rates, the economy, what people can afford and what people can't afford. So at the end of the day, I love the San Francisco Bay Area. I think anything you can touch here right now is probably golden, as long as you understand and work the numbers against basically what the return is going to be. Rents here, you know what's happened to rents. In San Francisco, you get a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in a B location for $3,600 a month. That's what you're paying. They have now what they call these mini little apartments, which are like 300 square feet. They're a bedroom. And all of these techies love them because they can get in for $1,800 to $2,000 a month. Are you listening to me? And they say, well, the neighborhood is where we work and live, and the bedroom is just where we sleep. And at the end of the day, what everybody says, and this woman from the Wall Street Journal called me to tell me how expensive San Francisco was, at $1,250 a square foot, I said to her, it's really quite cheap. She said, why? I said, because it's an international city, so you can't compare it to Detroit, Michigan. Let's try that. How does that work? I said, why don't we compare it to London and Paris and Rome and Beijing? And I said, you know, when you do that, we don't even make the top 5. London is the most expensive place to live in the world. It's $6,500 a square foot. That is unbelievable. So we're way, way down on the scale. So it's cheap to live in San Francisco. See how cheap it is to live here? So at the end of the day, she just said to me, oh, I just cannot deal with this. I said, okay, bye. Anyway, at the end of the month, let me just say this. First, happy holidays to everybody, because I want you all to have a good, happy holidays. Be kind to your families. I know you're going to sit down with people you hate, you never like, so look at it this way. Eventually, you're going to have a wearable application on your wrist or in your necklace or in your ear or something, and this is the way it'll work. You're going to get your just due, because I know at the holiday time you have to smile at that brother-in-law that you hate. But here's what's going to happen. Those appliances will tell you everything. What to eat, what not to eat. If you're too fat, too thin, run, don't run, sit down, get up, don't get up. You're too tired. But here's the best thing that they're going to do for you. A half hour before you die, they're going to tell you move over to the side of the road because it's coming. And you can call everybody you love and say, I love you. But the best thing is going to be you can call everybody you've always hated and say to them, you know, I've been wanting to do this for the last 7 years. I always hated you. I've always disliked you. I want to tell you how much I hate you. And I don't care because I won't be around for you to respond. So that would be a great thing. That's the best thing about these appliances that could possibly be. All right, I know my time is up, and I'm going to close with it. I think it's a cute story. You know, I have these 4 grandchildren, and they're 8, and they're 7, and then there's one that's 5, and there's this little one that's 4, that's a flaming redhead. I have no idea where we got her. I think she's the wrong person we picked up at the hospital, but we'll keep her. And if we can find the one that really belongs to us, we'll keep that one too. But she is basically impatient. She runs, she doesn't walk, she talks to herself. I had her out with lunch yesterday, and she talks to you like this. She says, let me tell you something. And she is basically really sharp, and she just basically kind of arrogant sometimes. And she's so determined. And the bad thing is, everybody says she's just like me. That is a bad thing. And so they named her Jameson after the liquor. Now, can you imagine this poor child? She has no clue. So we're in the store, and she always says, Nana, here's what we do when we go to lunch. She gets to pick the place. Do you like that? So yesterday she wanted to go to McDonald's, and I didn't want to go to McDonald's yesterday, so guess what I told her? McDonald's isn't open today. It's a holiday. They're out of here. Okay. So then she said to me, can I have an ice cream? Okay, we go have an ice cream. Then she said to me, can I have a toy? So we go into the toy store, which is Walgreens, because we're close to Walgreens. And she picks up this little bottle of bubbles. $2.99, and I'm trying to teach her a little bit of 2 things. One, you can't Jameson walk in a store and just pick up anything you want and walk out, because when you're with me, I will go to jail, not you. We cannot do that. We must pay for things. And the second thing is, money is all valued differently. So here are all these dollar bills, and you think they're the same, but this one has a 1 on it, this has a 5, this has a 10, and here's all this change, and see how different they are? Some are small, some are big, some are copper, some are silver, or whatever it is that they're at. And I said, so we have to know the difference. So I'm helping her figure out how to pay $2.99 plus tax, and we're doing that. She's getting half right and half wrong. And we get to the cash register, okay? And the lady there says, oh, how nice, you're helping your granddaughter learn about money. And this little tiny thing that's about this high looks up at her and says, you know, that's my Nana. And you know what? She has big bucks. Oh my God, I was never so humiliated in my whole life. But I figured I could handle this. She's 4, I'm in my 70s, I can handle this, not a problem. So we walk out, we get in the car, and I say, Jameson, where and what did you learn about, and do you know what big bucks mean? No, she said, I don't know. I said, well, where did you hear that? She said, well, my mommy, that's my daughter, was telling my daddy, Nana has big bucks. Okay, now I know. All right, now, good for me. So I let her off, I give her a kiss, bye-bye, sweetheart, I'll see you on the weekend. And I move over to the side of the road, and I call my daughter. And I say to my daughter, hello, it's Big Bucks calling. Well, you hear dead silence at the other end, and pretty soon you hear her say, well, Mama, let me try to explain. Well, Mom, you have to understand. I said, Jennifer, just stop, because here's your problem. Now that you've labeled me Big Bucks, it isn't a question of whether I have big bucks, no bucks, or just some bucks. Your problem is when I croak, are you getting any of the bucks? That's the problem. Bye.
Carole Rodoni, everybody. It's always great to have her back. Thank you, Carol. All right. Okay.